Hey Abby, so I wanted to send this video over in hopes that it's helpful. So basically what I wanted to do was offer a couple of pieces of advice. Basically, I've been thinking about your own journey, kind of where you're at with everything. And I just wanted to offer a couple of pieces of advice and give you a couple of ideas basically along the way so that we can help you out along your journey, right? So I'll be glancing up because I had taken a couple of notes here because I've been thinking about this here for a little bit. So basically, what I wanted to start off with, and these are all pieces of advice, you can take it or leave each one of them, take what works, discard the rest, it's all good. So what I wanted to start off with was, the first thing is just basically start off by taking a step back. I know you're kind of overwhelmed with everything at the moment. Your mind's kind of going in a couple of different directions with things, right? You're motivated, but you're kind of like, hey, like there's feelings of giving up in there and stuff like that. But basically, what I wanted you to start off with, the first piece of advice that I'd offer is just take a second to take a step back from everything and thank yourself for the stuff that you have done. And I get, like, right off the bat that this sounds very woo woo and all that kind of stuff, but it's an important part of the process to be nice to ourselves if we're putting in effort, right? Because it's a hard journey as it is, and if we're not being nice to ourselves, it's not like other people are going to come in and give you the props, right? If you're working hard and you've been consistent with your tracking, the things that you have put into place, like you have been trying. So it's definitely important to like acknowledge that within yourself and be like, hey, you're putting in effort here. Just, like give yourself that pat on the back because it is an important part of the process. So, and you've been eating more, you're feeling better. So even before you look at the weight loss side of things, there is change that you have made for yourself that is super like showing up in your day-to-day life, right? So this stuff is making a difference already. So just wanted to put that out there, that if you're not giving yourself those props, I can give it to you, but it's very hard to get that from the outside world. And you'll get it, like as you get down to your 140s and all that kind of stuff, like you'll get, oh my god, like nicely done and all that kind of stuff, and you'll receive that. And by that point you'll be like, hey, like it feels too late, but that will be there. But for now, it's got to come from you, basically. So the second thing I wanted to offer is, in a weird way, and I know this is kind of a counterintuitive message, but trying to distance yourself from the your success, right? So, and I know this sounds strange, but what I mean by this is, like, at the end of the day, you're not your health. You're not what shows up in the scale. And I know you know this, but you're not, like, it doesn't say anything about you if you have a good way in, if you have a bad way in, if you're trying something, it doesn't work. It doesn't say anything about you. So as much as you can, trying to get distance from that stuff, because it's very easy to show up and be beating ourselves up if something doesn't work out the way that you wanted, or if you're like, hey, look, I wanted to start moving a little bit more, I wanted to start exercising, or I wanted to start doing this, and you have a bunch of things going on. It's very easy to spend time beating yourself up and being like, look, this is, I didn't do this, and looking at all the reasons why something isn't progressing or why something isn't moving, right? So just getting some distance from that is super helpful, because that allows you to be, if you're not in process, what that does is it allows you to have distance from this stuff, but you have the downside of not being in process. If you're looking for a result, you want to find a way to be in process with that same distance mentally from the result. So I know this is super paradoxical, but you want to be doing everything that you can be doing for it. Well, not overwhelming yourself, of course, but also giving yourself as much distance from the result as possible. So it's like you want to be doing everything, but be the least attached to the outcome. Not that an outcome isn't important, but on a day-to-day basis with day-to-day weigh-ins, or you know what I mean, you want to have that focus on your process as opposed to the focus on the result, because the process is what will give you the result. So just wanted to say that, because at the end of the day, and I know that like you were kind of getting really discouraged, you're like, hey, like it feels like Should I just give up? Should I stay in the 160s? Is that where I am now? I know you mentioned that like it's easy to feel like you're broken or there's something that's not working if you're struggling to get results, but I just want you to know that that's not the case at all. And a lot of people do go through this. Everyone goes through it to different levels of extremes, but everyone does have this to a certain extent, right? The third thing, and probably the most important thing here, is you mentioned the mindset side of things. I remember reading a couple of years back a book called Psycho-Cybernetics, and basically it talks about how everything is based off identity and our belief in our ability to do something, right? So a quick story. I moved over here to Canada in 2016, just like 8 years ago now. At the time, I was 130 pounds. I was like severely underweight. I'm a 6'2" dude, by the way. So like I actually found a picture of showing my body last night. I'll send it to you if you want to see out of curiosity. But I was basically a skeleton at the time, right? And I remember just being like, oh, I want to do this training thing. I was like, no one's going to take me seriously. Like, this is going to be crazy. And what ended up happening was I ended up going through 60 sales calls before I actually had my first client that trusted in any ability to deliver results, basically. This is back in 2016. So I ended up doing all those like consultations, like each and every day, just being super discouraged and all that kind of stuff. And I ended up finally, like, one person was like, oh yeah, all right, let's go for it. And they ended up, I was in a big box gym at the time. And anyway, I was working with them, etc., etc. And then it went back to afterwards, it was like, oh, I was struggling to do it again. And it was like, okay, I got a result once. I got a little bit of a result once. And I was like, can I do more of that? Was that just a little bit? Was it luck? What's the situation there? And then what I ended up doing was I was struggling for a while. I was in a new country. I did not have a lot of cash at the time. And I was like, I have to fucking make this thing work. Sorry for the language. But it basically, I remember reading something in the book and it was like, okay, your identity is going to shape a lot of the results that you get, right? I know this sounds a little woo-woo, but the world is your mirror. What you view, you can see self-fulfilling prophecies in people all the time. If someone is super, super negative, they will attract a lot of negative things in their life. I'm not saying you're negative, but just using this as an example. So if you know someone that is super negative, it seems that things get worse and worse over time for them. And it's not just because, oh, they put a negative thought out there, but what they focus on will generally grow, right? So basically, I ended up reading this thing and I was like, okay. And I went into each and every consultation being like, I'm going to bring up the person that said yes, a reminder of my success with this particular thing in the past. And what that did is it primes you going into the situation to have the belief, because every time you think about, hey, I'm going to go back into process here, I'm going back into losing weight, your mind is going to instantly remind you, and you have this negative feedback loop that's constant of, oh, I tried it here, I tried it here, I've tried it here. And it's going to be this constant reaffirming thing and showing you all of those past failures. Even though the success is like mangled in there, it's going to keep bringing up those past failures, and that can be absolutely like horrendous to your mindset, right? So what I want to offer you as a piece of advice is, anytime you're thinking that, you have success in your track record, right? I was literally just looking at this here a minute ago. One sec, see if I can pull it up for you here. So look here. So here is your first progress sheet before we did the refeed, right? So on week 1, you have 165.9. Now I know your progress here wasn't Instagram super crazy things or anything like that, but if you go down to, let's say, 10 weeks, so you have 165.9, so 166 pretty much measured as your average at the end of week 1, right? So if we go to week 10, which is 9 weeks later, you're pretty much down 5 pounds, right? So that's 0.66 pounds per week, super consistently. And you were doing good at this point. I know you were, but there's also, that's a continued success week after week from something that we can put more into as well, right? Or you can put more into, whether you have support or not on the rest of your journey. But just reminding yourself that, hey, there's times where you see success, and recalling that anytime you're struggling mentally with the process, whether you're in process or whether you're struggling to get back into your process, bringing that back up will help you shape how the future turns out. Because every time you're trying to make a change right now, what's going to easily happen is all those past failures will come up, and it's just going to reaffirm your belief in not being able to do something. So my piece of advice is, okay, cool, yes, there is a history of not being able to make something work, but there's also evidence that you have done this in the past. What my piece of advice is, the thing that I'll offer you, is your brain is always going to wire towards the negative bias of things. This is an evolutionary thing. We can miss a potential good. We cannot miss a potential threat. If we miss a potential piece of food, there's going to be another piece of food a couple of miles down the road. If we potentially miss a tiger, it's game over, right? We are wired to, this is why news, media, and all that kind of stuff like pings people with negative things all the time. It's not just because everyone's super negative. Although in a way we kind of are, it's just what we respond to, right? So our brains are always going to do this stuff. It is supernatural. But if you want to give yourself a fighting chance, it is also realistic to look at the successes, because they are there. You have done this for yourself. You know you can do this again, and that's just pulling yourself into the process that you had before. If you're adding in extra movement, if you have a little bit of steps during the day, which you mentioned that you did have the time or the availability to do, you can bring that 0.6 a lot closer to that 1 pound a week, and have yourself in 3-4 months time being at those 140s again, right? So just wanted to remind you that you have done this. I know your biggest thing was, hey, like, you don't feel like you can actually get there. You don't have to focus on the 140s by now. I know I mentioned this last time we chatted. You can just focus on one thing at a time. Okay, can I get the next couple of pounds? And you can do this without going to extremes. I know it's one of your biggest worries, is basically overdoing things, or putting yourself in a situation where you're really not eating enough and kind of pulling back the boundaries and losing everything that you've gained so far. So just realizing that, like, you've done this in a way that was good in the past. You felt good at that amount of calories. And I know you got to a point where you were, like, hey, I feel like I'm, kind of worried about food and stuff like that. Because you have been in a calorie deficit for so long, you were in a lower intake of calories, whether it was a deficit or not. It doesn't mean that that's the case when you go back into a new deficit, especially if you were doing a refeed and basically increasing your calories and stuff like that for a period of time. It doesn't mean that going back into it, it's the exact same thing, right? Because your body has that food, it knows it's available, and it doesn't need to downregulate your metabolism. So just wanted to bring that up and just mention on the refeed side of things that as you went through that, it's cool. We didn't come out of it being like, hey, now everything is perfect and fixed and you're able to do 3 pounds a week or anything like that. But it's also, you learned, and we both learned, okay, here's where your metabolism is at, here's how much it's likely to swing. And if it's not swinging so much up, it's also not going to swing so much down the other way, right? So if you're already able to make progress pre-refeed, and you have a lot of like availability to get some extra steps in and all that kind of stuff, we don't need a change in metabolism, or you don't need a change in metabolism to actually make that progress, right? So just wanted to kind of put all that out there. Just making sure I didn't miss anything here. But yeah, look, if I can put that all into perspective, just want you to know that the 140s are super realistic for you. I know you've been struggling a little bit with the belief in being able to get there, so I really hope that this did help. And yeah, at the end of the day, look, whether you have support or not, whether we're continuing to work together or not, I just want you to know that you can do this. I wanted to show you a reminder that you have done this in the past. Cool, there's tweaks that you can make, but you have been experimenting. You've been, okay, let's try here with refeeds. Let's try with this thing, with that thing. You've been tracking your data and you've been consistent with this stuff along the way, and you have a track record and a history of results here. So it's just getting you back into that process will be the main game changer for you. So just wanted to put that out there. I basically want to run something by you. So if you do want some support with the journey, I know your main thing was not feeling like it was the right time or anything like that. And this is no pressure at all here. I just wanted to run an idea by you. And I know we did something similar to this before, but not quite. But what I wanted to offer is basically, if you were still wanting support and you're just like, hey, look, a part of you is ready to jump in and you know you were ready to get the results, but you still have those reservations. What I wanted to run by you was doing let's say the way we had it planned out. I know I sent you the 3-step process there, and let me know if you haven't seen that or have a quick look through the email. But if we were to run our ordinary 3 months of coaching, what I would be willing to do for you, and this is so that I have skin in the game too. And I know you're worried about a couple of different things, whether that's the right timing. I know you mentioned you don't want to be like a nightmare client, which you never were, by the way, so don't worry about that. But I wanted to make sure that we eliminate all the downsides and all the stress and offer you an ability to move forward and make progress, right? So here's my idea. Let me know if you like it. If not, cool, perfect, but this is what I wanted to lay out on the table. How would you feel about running the 3 months, but instead of like committing to anything, we run your first 2 weeks as a pure trial? Hey, like, do I feel like this is the right time? Am I starting to build up this process again? Am I able to get myself back into the exact same way you did the first time, where you're just like, hey, look, I'm starting to make these changes here. I'm starting to get the calories dialed into the right spot. Do I feel good about this? Do I feel like I'm not overextending myself? The worry was there, and I know we did something like this in the past where I think you paid for the first 2 weeks and we did a thing. But basically what my idea is okay, there's no financial commitment. If 2 weeks in you're like, okay, cool, perfect, look, we're back in process, I know I'm getting towards the 140s here and everything is going well, then cool, perfect, we can continue on with the 3 months. But what I wanted to do is run it by you where you have the support there, but the first 2 weeks is a complete 100% guilt-free. If you're like, hey Adam, like 10 days in, you're just like, this is not working, it's not the right time, no matter what reason it is, it's a complete freedom to be like, okay, look, no bueno, this isn't the right time, for whatever reason that is. But it gives you the opportunity to see all the upside without any of the downside. So I just wanted to put that out there and offer it to you as an option so that you are able to jump back into process and it doesn't feel so overwhelming, right? So if that's something you want to do, I'd be happy to chat, or we could even jump into that pretty much over the next couple of days here. Tomorrow I'll probably be taking off, but we could do something like that on Monday. And yeah, basically what that would look like is jumping into our 2 coaching calls. I would basically send you over an agreement similar to before, and I'll basically put it into, hey, this is 2 weeks, 100%. For any reason, as long as you're sticking to your process and stuff like that. If you're just like, hey, look, this isn't the right time, if you don't feel like you're getting results or anything like that, it's a pure zero guilt-free. And I know this is something that like you will be like, oh, I don't want to do that, I don't want to waste your time. But this from me, if I can be straight up with you, is me putting skin in the game too, because I also believe in your ability to make this work. I know you're going to be able to get there. And look, if that way it takes off any of the extra pressure, you don't feel so overwhelmed going into something. And I think that kind of smooths out all of the potential downsides of jumping into something like this. So let me know what you think of that. I basically wanted to offer something that would be super helpful. Let me know if there's any questions that you have on it or anything like that, because I know we're not doing a back and forth, and I'm just sending this over before I head over for a quick sauna session here. So I just wanted to send this over. Do let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you want to jump into something like that, or if you want to kind of offer any alternate variation of it or anything like that. I'd be happy to explore it with you. But I just wanted to send this over to you before I head over to the gym, and I better run because I am going to be a little bit behind. So cool, sending this over. I'll probably get it over on YouTube, and I'll chat to you soon. Hope you're doing well and having a good start to your Saturday, by the way. Take care.